Okay. All right, Abdullah, back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I have two main topics. So feel free if you didn't get a chance to add your topic to the agenda to let me know if there are other things that you want to talk about. So the first one is really quick. So I want to thank Mike for really persisting through that change of making multi-point plugin config. It was a large PR with lots of corner cases, and thanks to Wei as well and Aldo going through all these corner cases and having trying our best to address basically all the potential issues that could arise from having this new multi-point extension point. I'm gonna give it to Mike. If you would like to have like a 1 minute summary of what we've done, I think because this is one of the major things we've done in the component config API, so I think it's worth talking about it now that it's merged.
Yeah, absolutely. So this multi-point plugin config was, I think you actually proposed it originally, and the general idea is that right now our component config to configure individual plugins, you have to enable them for each individual extension point. So if you have a plugin that, for example, does filter and score, and you want to enable the whole plugin, you have to go through in your component config and actually enable it for filter and score. And it's the same for pre-filter, pre-score, all of those. So for most cluster users, administrators, those extension points are really irrelevant. They either just want the plugin enabled or they don't. These extension points themselves are kind of more relevant to developers and those kind of users. So what we did with multi-point is it sets up the idea of you can enable a plugin through this new setting, this new field, and it will automatically be registered for all of the individual extension points that it implements. And so within that, you can still go and disable it for specific extension points if you want. So you have that kind of flexibility, and that just sort of fits in with the existing behavior for these configs. So yeah, is just really going to simplify the ability to enable and disable plugins, without having to have a big complicated configuration and make sure that you have it enabled in all the different extension points that you need. So we got the changes merged. We are still working on the docs changes, which are going to try to cover a lot more edge cases, and a lot of the different combinations that you can have with this, because like Abdullah was mentioning, there's a lot of different combinations that you can have with multi-point and individual extension points and different kind of settings like that. So I'll add the link to the docs PR into the agenda here. But yeah, if anyone has any feedback for that, feel free to share it and add your comments to the docs PR. I'm just adding it to the agenda right now. But yeah, so this was really great. We went through a lot of review. We had a lot of, everyone was paying really close attention to the different corner cases and the ways that this could affect current configs. And our goal is to really make this as transparent of a shift as possible, so that it doesn't affect running configs that people have right now if they're using the individual extension points, but the transition to multi-point should be pretty seamless. So that's it in a nutshell. This is, like you're saying, one of the bigger changes that we've made to component config in a while. So it's great to see it. And I think that this is probably one of the last big changes that we'll make before graduating it to GA. So good job, everyone. And thank you to everyone that helped review it and helped provide feedback on it. It's definitely a pretty cool feature that we've added.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, please feel free to comment on the docs PR. Again, it's really important to make sure that everybody understands how this new configuration mode works. And so and the best way to do that is to make the docs as clear as possible. So yeah, please take a look at it. The other agenda item that I want to quickly go through is like we have, I know 4 main features that we might have KIPs for them in the next cycle. I just want to bring the community's attention to them. If you have strong opinions in one way or another, please comment on those potential new features. I think we only have 1 KIP raised for one of these features. But still, it's in the very early stage. If you have strong opinions, please comment on the issues first so that we can make sure we are as efficient as possible when we start the KIP process. So quickly, the first one is taking taints and tolerations into consideration when calculating pod topology spread. And this is mostly needed because when you cordon a node and trying to basically upgrade a group of nodes, you cordon it, you basically taint it with unscalable taint, and this node is supposed to be like, go away in a matter of in a short time. So the pods that are running on it, they're gonna get killed eventually, and so we shouldn't really be taking those pods into account when calculating skew. So that's the main use case for taking taints and tolerations into account. We currently already take node affinity. So the proposal here is to add taints and tolerations. So the second one.
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, Abdullah. So some additional comments. So basically, right now the consensus is that at least we should consider the unschedulable unit. But another option I'm thinking about is that make it configurable so that user can define what kind of taints they want to exclude. So, for example, they may use some custom taints on purpose for doing similar purposes. So maybe it's good to add arguments or sort of things to make it customizable. Yeah, we can discuss that. Yeah.
Right, and we need to make sure we're taking backward compatibility into account because we don't want to. It's a behavioral change. So people might be
so basically, the arguments can be defaulted to nil, right? And actually, when we add this behavior, we are already being backwards incompatible. So I'm thinking about using a compatible way for you to explicitly to specify this kind of additional constraints, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't mean like to get into the details of and nitty-gritty details of design of this one. I just want to highlight that this is something in the pipeline. There are potential compatibility issues related to it, and it's really important to have the community comment, make sure that we take all the current cases into account. Yeah, I just want to go through the others quickly so that we give the unicorn folks some time to ask questions. So we don't really need to go like open the issues or anything. So pod topology spread, do not schedule to schedule anyway fallback mode, and we've discussed this in the issue. The main motivation here is to basically have a way like to switch modes. Like for example, if cluster autoscaler is not able to bring up a new zone because the zone is out of commission, and then at this point you really probably want to fall back into, okay, let me schedule all the pods in the same zone or in 2 zones rather than 3. And so I think this mode could solve that problem, and it would probably be useful in general. It's backward compatible. It's an added feature. So let's hear your thoughts on this proposal as well on the issue. Hopefully someone will pick it up as well and start a kit. I think someone already did.
Nope, no one has been assigned.
Okay, so I guess the other one is it's actually right. So the next one, the third one, which is tuning the number of domains, is the one that someone started the kit for. Again, it's in the context of improving pod topology spread API, where we would like to have to inform basically Kubernetes of how many domains do we expect the spreading to occur. The reason we might want to do this is because right now the scheduler makes an assumption about this based on existing nodes. So for example, if you're trying to spread across 2 zones, but currently you only have a single node in one zone, there's no way for the scheduler to know that there would be a second, there should be a second zone with new nodes that would come up if, like using cluster autoscaler, for example. And so it would assume that the whole cluster only contains a single domain, which is like, for example, zone A, and will basically schedule all the pods on that same node or zone flip without triggering, an unschedulable, like, without setting pods as unschedulable, and so you can trigger basically cluster autoscaler to bring up nodes in a different zone. So this is basically a parameter that will allow customers to basically set the minimum number of domains. Like I expect that this, for example, deployment to be spread across at least 2 zones or 3 zones. So if you only have 2 zones, then yeah, like you would, the next part will be unscheduled unless we bring up the more zones to satisfy the main domain parameter. And last but not least, there is the one-to-one pod to node assignment. I think we discussed this 2 meetings ago, so I'm not gonna really go into too much detail into this one. But again, feel free to comment on the issue. I think someone is planning to submit a KIP, but I didn't see anything yet. Okay, that's all I have. Any comments or feedback on what we've discussed? All right, so we've got 15 minutes for Unicorn folks to have to ask any questions they would like about scheduler and scheduler plugins.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, Abdullah. So this is Wei from Unicorn community, and we have a few other folks also from Unicorn community joined today. And we have some questions about schedule plugin, but let me give you some context first. You may or may not know about Unicorn project. So this is our project, is also a scheduler for Kubernetes. And when we start a project, there's no really a scheduling a framework available in the Kubernetes. So we want to provide enough capability for batch scheduling. So we start from scratch, and Unicorn standalone project, and it's a standalone Kubernetes scheduler since then. But as we see now today, Kubernetes has the scheduling plugin, and we start to think about the possibilities that if we can contribute a Unicorn-based schedule plugin. So that's when we think about this problem, then we start to realize a bunch of issues. That's why we come here and ask some questions. I will start from my questions, and folks online can ask more. And the first question I have is, we noticed we did some investigation, and we see there's a Kubernetes SIG scheduler plugins repo on GitHub. So my first question is this the official repo to host all the scheduler plugins?
Yes, so no. So basically, schedule plugins is a place for incubating some good ideas to fit for some scheduling requirements that haven't been implemented in the default scheduler. So for example, a lot of people have the code scheduling requirements. A lot of people have the like elastic quota capacity scheduling requirements. So they raise caps and submit their implementations there. But it's not necessary to, we don't enforce you to sort of submit your implementation. There is just that it's a Kubernetes SIG maintained project, and we encourage everyone, every company to contribute their idea and the implementations. And definitely you can have your own repo, or you can fork your repo to just add your specific plugins. It's totally okay.
Oh, thanks. That is helpful because we already have a repo in Apache. So if we start to work in the Apache repo and host there, that is also fine, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So yeah, a quick follow-up question to that is, so you mentioned that plugins repo is for incubating some ideas that haven't been implemented in the default scheduler. Then what is the process of promoting those ideas once the community thinks that they are mature and it's time to incorporate those plugins into the default scheduler? What's the timeline or the process of promoting a plugin?
I think we have issue discussing the general guidance and criteria for making the out-of-tree plugin back to in-tree. So several points that Abdullah, Aldo, Mike pointed out is that first one is should be very universally applicable to all users and very beneficial to the whole Kubernetes ecosystem, not only to a particular vendor or sort of thing, right? The applicability. The second thing is shouldn't make the implementation and the internal logic way too complicated. Like you have to pay extra overhead to make it fulfilled, right? So basically, the rule is that the users who don't want to use this kind of feature shouldn't be penalized. So there's a second point. And third point is that I think the third one is that some implementations may come with CRD if you think about out-of-tree plugins. So you have to think about whether the CRD can be merged into the upstream as a core API resource. For example, recently the motivation to bring up this discussion is whether we should or not to move the pod group API to the Kubernetes upstream. So we should think about whether the pod group requirement is very general and how much it can bring in to the Kubernetes ecosystem. So I think this is a third point in the API's perspective. And other folks have other ideas about whether we have a standardized guideline, principles, criterion to merge it back. But for now, there's no plugins incubating the scheduling plugin and successfully moved back yet.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, third point may be the most challenging one, because typically the Kubernetes doesn't vendor a CRD in the Kubernetes/Kubernetes code base, right? So all its vendor is its own core API resources instead of the external CRD.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
did it answer your question?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks.
Well, so basically we have the schedule plugins repo, but that's the place for incubating ideas. And the purpose is actually when that is mature enough, those plugins can be able to merge back to the in-tree scheduler. Is that idea?
No,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
would say
not in the general not in the general sense. So it's not about when it becomes mature, then by default it should be in tree. I mean, the idea of having a pluggable framework is to allow you to develop outside, not to basically bring everything inside. So the thing is, like, Kubernetes in general has grown so much, right? Like, we want to pay attention to the maintainability and production readiness of the product, right? And so at the same time, we want to allow the community to innovate and implement whatever features they want. And so we're providing these hooks. So at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a case-by-case thing. We can't make a general rule, or if you check these boxes, then yeah, sure, you're gonna get like this plugin merged into KK. There are multiple dimensions that needs to be evaluated, and there is no set, threshold. If you cross it, then the plugin should be in KK. It includes, again, like scalability of the plugin, how it impacts maintainability, how it impacts complexity of the code itself, how it impacts like general performance, and whatnot. So I feel that there is no like hard answer here. It's going to be case by case. We are discussing in that issue what is the general criteria and framework that we can use to discuss this, but it doesn't mean that there would be like a checklist. Once you do it, then once a plugin does it, then it's in. It's hard like to just actually come up with that, because it's subjective and it's a case by case.
Got it. Thanks. So
yeah,
basically,
just to think of your schedule plugin as a Lego building block, and it doesn't matter where you place this building block. You can place in the schedule plugins. You can place in your Apache project, and the final Lego product is just a building from both the in-tree and optional with the out of tree, building blocks, and then you go compose them as the final schedule. So that's it.
I see. I guess another question I have is, what is the best way to let user to use the schedule plugin? So we know that in some, could you please give some suggestions?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, that is also one, if not the main purpose, it's also byproduct of the schedule plugins. So in the very beginning, we discussed what's the motivation and what's the ultimate goal of the schedule plugins, whether we treat it as just SDKs or as a sort of image product for the user to just use out of the box. So basically right now it serves as in both these two purposes. In one way is, just as I mentioned, it have a lot of building blocks and you can treat them as the SDK. So you can import them. You can import just partial of the plugins. You can write just as the default plugins. You can choose the disable, enable them. You can also choose the enable default the plugins in the schedule plugins. So you treat them as the SDK instead of all-in-one product. But in another way, so some beginners doesn't understand so deep on the scheduling framework as well as the plugin mechanism. They just want to start using it and to try out some basic ideas. So that the schedule plugin also release the images to compile all the plugins out there, because with the schedule config, you can disable, enable any one of them. So it's easy. It's just all the source codes are there, all are compiled, but you can disable, enable as whatever way you want. So that's I will say, the byproduct of the schedule plugins. You can use just the images out of box.
So there are two aspects to this, right? Like there's one is how do you advertise it? The other thing is how do you get users to use it? So the first one, maybe the schedules plugin repo is the most visible place for schedule plugin. But how to get users to use it? I mean, if it is actually solving a problem that users are facing, then wouldn't, I mean, naturally user starts to use it and pick up, like, you know, that plugin.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, that makes sense. And so today, do we have an option to when we provision a Kubernetes cluster, we do not enable default schedule, but the schedule plugin. Do you have a way to do that?
Yes, we have a document doing that, but that requires you to have the privilege to manipulate on the control plane. So it's not fully automated, like you can use a chart to do that. So you have to do some manual step, but we have documents doing that. For example, we have install things. So here we mentioned two options. So you can just use the Helm chart to install the image as a second schedule. So in that case, you have two schedules running there. This is not the ideal way. This is not that recommended, but can get the beginners very quickly start with the schedule plugin. The second way is that you don't start a default schedule and use the sort of scheduler plus, which is the default schedule plugin plus the out of tree scheduler plugin here. So as a single scheduler, so that you don't need to worry about like the resource conflicts on multiple schedulers.
Got it.
Yeah, it's mentioned replacing the vanilla default scheduler. Yeah.
I see. So is there anybody in the community are using schedule plugin as a second scheduler?
Mike, can you comment? I think Red Hat has a secondary scheduler operator out there.
Yeah, we have a project to try to productize secondary schedulers to users so that we can, in OpenShift, so that we can ship our platform with the default scheduler without having to worry about users affecting cluster stability. But they still have a lot of needs for secondary schedulers. Like I know that there's a lot of AI and ML use cases for like co-scheduling. We have a couple other teams that are working on like topology aware scheduling. So we do have some customer use cases for getting a secondary scheduler in. So it's just really looking for like the maturity of the platform and the well, I mean the platform is mature, but more like the kind of adoption and a productized and supported way to get it to people. So that's what we're doing here, and that's gonna kind of help this framework grow because a lot of the questions that you guys have are pretty common questions that people are having right now with how to get involved with the custom scheduler setups. So it's just trying to spread that knowledge around and get more people involved and more contributors. We'll get some steam going for this project.
I see. Thanks.
And yeah, I also know the big companies like Alibaba, Apple are using the schedule plugin extensively, as well as Tencent, and also some startups like Litwin. I'm not sure he's on this meeting. So Litwin from OpenAI are also using the schedule plugins extensively, and they, I think in the last year, released some blog, very hot blog that says OpenAI supports more than.
Are they using the schedule plugin from the repo, where they are developing their own and?
I think they are using the native schedule plugin like co-scheduling. So, and also they mentioned to me offline that using some latest features, their workloads has been boosted by 10 to 100 times, and they open some issues out there. Let me see. Yeah, co-scheduling. Yeah, Litwin from OpenAI. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
So who has the right permission in this repo, schedule plugin repo?
So for now, I'm the approval, and I think everyone can contribute. It's not mandatory for me to approve this. I'd like to delegate out of some of my responsibilities is for other people have the expertise to understand the code base, and I'm happy to dedicate my own privilege.
I see.
Yeah, it's just follow the common Kubernetes principles for you to promote as a review or approval. Yeah, that's not a big thing. Yeah.
Okay. Are we doing any releases for the scheduler plugin repo?
Yes, we do.
Does that align with the Kubernetes releases?
It's I would say one release behind, but not too much. For example, the latest is rendering 122. So right now 123 is not released yet, right? So it's rendering the latest release, but it's only the master. So you can think of it as one release behind. And in terms of the official release, is 120, 121. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, because making the master to rendering the latest Kubernetes can give some buffer to fix some bugs if we are not adapting to the latest branch well.
I think it's important to keep in mind that this scheduler plugins repo isn't itself the framework. Like, this is just one example of a custom scheduler. So you can develop your own plugins and put them into your own release cadence that follows as closely as you want with pulling in the Kubernetes updates upstream. This is one example of that, and it's got a lot of custom plugins in it, but really a custom scheduler with the framework can be written in a couple lines of code, and you can import all of the plugins from this repo if you want. This isn't like the only place that custom plugins can go. This is just probably the prime example of setting it up. So you keep that in mind, that the point of the framework is that anyone can make their own scheduler plugins repo, basically.
Okay. So yeah, we want to have a unicorn-based scheduler plugin, and if we have that someday, how can we advertise and let people know about this scheduler plugin? Can we add a link here or something? If we host our code still in the Apache repo.
I would say there's some ways to promote that. You can, for example, submit some CNCF for Kubernetes blogs, and also, you can have a link here in the README or sort of thing, and you can also promote that by submitting some KubeCon sessions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we are all our goal is consistent to make the scheduling plugins and scheduling framework to more adopted by a lot of users, so they don't need to maintain multiple schedulers, right? That is crap. So I think our goal is the same. So we can definitely list here like plugins. We just mentioned here that, for example, this is also a schedule plugin, but it's hosted elsewhere. So that's it.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay. Okay, that's all the questions from me. I'm not sure if there's any other question from other Unicorn folks.
I have one more question, which is, would it be possible in the README on the scheduler plugin repo to put in a very targeted, tested in this version of Kubernetes, just for clarity?
So I want to understand whether what's your question. So your question is that possible to?
Yeah, you're saying you lag behind about a release, right? From from Kubernetes. So if you can put something in here to make it clear.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Or I can. I mean, it's GitHub.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I will finish the issue with you.
Oh, one more question. So does that mean one version of scheduler plugin can only work with one version of Kubernetes?
Basically, it depends on the, so according to Kubernetes design, so it's backwards compatible, right? So, so I would say, strictly, it was the best if you have the same version, but it should work most of the time with the lower versions.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Well, I really appreciate all the answers that really help us a lot. And right now we're in a very early stage, and we still think about how we can get it, get a scheduler plugin done with based on Unicorn. We will let you guys know if we make some more progress on that. Thanks
Sure.
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Any other questions which are not listed here, so we can discuss that. Otherwise, I think we can end today's meeting, and next week. Yeah, Abdullah, before I start recording, do you have any comments?
I think he left.
Oh, really? Okay. Never mind. So yeah, have a nice weekend, and maybe the next week is a vacation week, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. The same to you.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good one.
Bye.